How do you face difficulties in life? I want you to think about that for a moment. How do you face difficulties? And this is a question for everyone because we are all prone to facing difficulties. There is no one here that is exempt from facing difficulties in life. One of the things that I learned right away in my walk with God is just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean I'm exempt from facing difficulties in life. In fact, because I'm a Christian, I will face certain difficulties in life. Any moms in the house? Raise your hand if you're a mom. Maybe you're a young mom or an older mom or a mom who just became a grandma or a mom with adult children or a mom with babies or a mom with adult children who act like babies, or maybe you're a working mom or a stay-at-home mom or a single mom or a mom with heavenly babies. Regardless of who you are, moms, you face your fair share of difficulties, right? In fact, because you're a mom, you face specific types of difficulties. You see, regardless of who we are, whether we're a mom or a dad, a grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt, cousin, niece, nephew, friend of a friend, whether you are an only child, whether you are young or old or rich or poor, whether you are married or whether you are single and ready to Christian mingle, right? We will all face, and we all face difficulties in life. So, how do you face difficulties that come your way? Do you face them with fear, with worry, with anger, with doubt, with frustration, with stress, with depression, with anxiety, bogged down by the uncertainty of what happens next? Do you face them in secrecy, not letting anyone know that you're even going through something and doing everything you can to hide it from everyone? Or do you face difficulties alone, refusing to let anyone be a part of what you're going through, or maybe thinking that it's only up to you to face head on the thing before you? See, if I can be honest, there have been many different times and many different difficulties that I have faced where one or more of those applied in my life. I faced them that type of way. But how do you face the difficulties that come to your life? Now, this is a question not just worth asking ourselves, but it really is a question worth spending enough time on, because the way we face difficulties affects our life more than we can even understand, because it doesn't just mean success or failure in that particular circumstance, but watch this. It means the difference, and it can mean the difference between success and failure in so many different areas of our lives for the rest of our lives, because we will face difficulties the rest of our lives. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend the better part of my life, or the remaining part of my life, gripped by fear and worry and frustration and anger and doubt and depression and stress and anxiety and secrecy and loneliness every time a difficulty comes my way, especially not as a follower of Jesus. And that's why I'm confident to say that if it were up to all of us, even if you're not a follower of Jesus, if it were up to all of us, we would all face our challenges and every hardship and every difficulty that comes our way with confidence. We would choose to face it with clarity. We would choose to face it with joy. We would choose to face it with an incredible peace, knowing that everything's going to work out just fine. Now, the good news is that God wants you to approach every hardship, every circumstance, every difficulty that comes your way that way too. Because His Word not only gives us instructions, but example after example and direction after direction of how we can accomplish this each and every time, no matter the type of difficulty, no matter the size of the difficulty. And can you imagine no longer being gripped by fear, worry, frustration, anger, or doubt every time a difficulty comes your way? Can you imagine no longer being overwhelmed by anxiety, stress, or depression? Can you imagine no longer being confused as to what to do or feeling like you're alone in everything you do when it comes to this difficulty? In fact, can you imagine knowing without a shadow of a doubt that whatever it is, however it is, you will be just fine, and you actually being just fine after every difficulty? But how do we accomplish that? Well, I want us to look at the story of a woman in 1 Kings chapter 4 that gives us an answer to this question. It answers this question. How do we do that? How can we face difficulties and be okay and face it with clarity and courage and just get through it the right way? Now, what's interesting about this woman we're going to look at in just a moment is that we're not even given her name. Usually we get at least a name, but we're not given her name. All we're told is that she was a widow and a mom. And it's because she was a widow and a mom that she had this very big difficulty approach her life. And given that it's Mother's Day, I think it's fitting to learn from the life of this mom, because one of the things I appreciate about moms is this. Moms always, or for the most part, think they're doing the worst job ever. They're failing at being a mom, but they have no idea how awesome they are at being a mom. In fact, the way a mom, there's something unique about a mom. The way a mom approaches certain situations doesn't compare to the rest of other people or dads, right? The way we approach situations, moms have this killer instinct. Moms are willing to roll up their sleeves and do what it takes, especially when it involves their family. So we're going to look at this mom, and we're going to see that the way this mom handled her difficulty not only gave her success in her situation, but it left behind these incredible examples that if we follow in our own difficulties, we will have success as well. And all in just 7 simple verses. So let's read her story. 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 1 says that one day the widow of the member of the group of prophets came to Elisha and cried out. Now, if you're new, Elisha's this big prophet of God, awesome man of God, right? And it tells us that she says this. This is what she says. She cries out, "My husband who served you is dead. And you know how he feared the Lord. But now a creditor has come, threatening to take my 2 sons as slaves." Verse 2 says, "What can I do to help you?" Elijah asked. "Tell me, what do you have in the house?" "Nothing at all except a flask of olive oil," she replied. And Elijah said, "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors. Then go into your house with your sons and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside when it is filled." Verse 5 says, "So she did as she was told. Her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. 'Bring me another jar,' she said to one of her sons. 'There aren't any more,' he told her. And then the olive oil stopped flowing. When she told the man of God what had happened, he said to her, 'Now sell the olive oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over.'" Now, if you're brand new to church, or maybe you're new in your walk with God, this sounds incredible that she was able to fill these many containers with a small flask, a small jar of oil, that the oil just somehow miraculously kept pouring and pouring, and this small thing filled so many jars. And so if you're brand new, you're new to the faith, this sounds incredible, but it also sounds a little unbelievable. Now, if you're new to church or in your walk, let me tell you something. I'm just a few steps ahead of you in this walk with God. And let me just tell you that for the person who chooses to make Jesus Lord of their life and makes a committed decision to follow him sincerely, wholeheartedly, they will quickly learn that following Jesus is no ordinary thing. And the results that a life gets from following Jesus are never ordinary. And the power of God isn't just limited. See, if you stay in this long enough, you'll learn quickly that the power of God isn't limited to the pages of the Bible or the people in the pages of the Bible. Anyone can experience the amazing power of God firsthand. They simply invite God into their lives and into their situations. This actually leads us to the very first thing we can learn from how this mom faced the difficulty, something that we can follow and model. See, watch this. When faced with the difficulty, we see that this mom involved God in the process. We read in verse 1 that she went to Elisha, the prophet, seeking help in the midst of her difficulty. Now, Elijah is certainly not God, but Elijah represented God, especially for the people. And in that time, he spoke on behalf of God. So by her approaching Elisha, she knew she was ultimately approaching God. And for all of us that will face difficulties, are facing difficulties, we have to understand, we have to remember that the faster we can approach God, the faster we can go to God, the faster we will be on our way to victory. But it's not just about approaching God fast. You see, the more we can involve God, the more of God we will have in the midst of our difficulty. That's why we must involve God as soon as we can and as much as we can, no matter the type of difficulty, no matter the size of difficulty. We have to do it as soon as we can, and there's no way we can lose when we do this. But the question is, are we doing this? In fact, I want to ask you, are you? I want you to consider this. Are you involving God in the process of getting through your difficulty? Because it does us no good to have a God and know a God that can do exceedingly, abundantly more than we can ever ask or imagine, but we don't go to him in the midst of our difficulty. Or we go to him last in the midst of our difficulty. Or we just don't allow him to take complete charge of our difficulty. You see, if you find yourself afraid, stressed, worried, maybe full of anxiety or depression, or you feel confused or you feel alone, it's a clear sign that you have not gone to Jesus yet, or that you have not allowed him to take complete charge of your situation. The psalmist declares in Psalm 34:19, I love this verse, the righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to the rescue each time. Peter later wrote, a follower of Jesus, in 1 Peter 5:6-7, he says, so humble yourselves under the mighty power of God, and at the right time, he will lift you up in honor. And then he goes on to write, give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. And then Paul, a follower of Jesus, wrote in Philippians 4:6-7, don't worry about anything. Yeah, but you don't understand what I'm going through. Don't worry about anything. Instead, involve God, right? Pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done, and then something will happen. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. This is not your ordinary peace. This is not a common peace, a normal peace. This is a special kind of peace. He says, this peace, his peace, will guard your heart and mind as you live in Christ Jesus. This means that aside from getting answers to your situations, as you go through it, this peace will allow you to be cool, calm, and collective, no matter the type of difficulty, no matter the size of difficulty. We need to seek out God in the midst of our situations, no matter the type or size. But are you doing that? Is that something that you are in the habit of doing? And you cannot go wrong involving God in the process of your situations. Now, another thing we can learn from this mom is that when faced with a difficulty, number 2, this mom chose to obey the instructions. Now, many of us can go to God easily, but this is where some of us hit a wall. This is where some of us struggle when it comes to obeying the instructions that God gives us. You see, she made a deliberate choice to obey what was told. As crazy as it may have seemed, wait. This little thing is going to fill as many jars as I can get. But verse 5 tells us that she did as she was told. She listened. She made a decision to obey. And what was she told? She was told a few things. One of the things she was told was this. She was told that her possession would be used for her provision. She didn't have anything of great value. They did not have a lot of money or savings or anything. In fact, Elijah said, what do you have in the house? Nothing except this little itty bitty thing. We don't even know if it was full completely. But as insignificant as this little bottle may have seemed in her hands, God would use it and make it become her provision. And when we face difficulties, we cannot underestimate or undermine or devalue what God wants to use to turn our situations around. See, one of the things that we have a hard time doing is getting our heads around the fact that God exists outside of our human limitations, that He's not bound by human reasoning or logic or even the laws of physics. He can use anything, anytime, anywhere to bring you an answer. He has an incredible track record, brother, sister, incredible track record of making the insignificant become significant in our lives. That is why we need to obey. No matter what it is we're hearing, no matter what it is God is telling us to do, especially in the middle of our situations. Even if the answer seems insignificant, or even if you cannot connect the dots in what He's telling you to do. You see, today there's someone here and God is telling you to apologize, even though it wasn't your fault. And you're trying to connect the dots. How does that repair or fix the situation that I've been asking you about? God, there's no connection, or what is this simple apology going to do? You don't understand how broken the situation may be. Or maybe God is calling you to give, and you're thinking, hello, McFly, hello, right? I just told you, God, I have a financial situation, and you're telling me to give? Or maybe God is telling you or calling you or pressing upon you to get involved in a life group, and you're thinking, yeah, that's all good and dandy, but what is that going to do with the situation I have? But we have to choose, make the choice, whether you can connect the dots or not, whether these seems significant or insignificant, make the willing choice to obey. I love what Dr. Charles Stanley says. He says, choose to obey God and leave the consequences to Him. Choose to obey Him and leave the consequences to Him. She did what she was told. Another thing she was told was this. She was also told that she needed to involve others, involve other people, as many as she could. What's interesting is that Elijah didn't tell her how many, and then we're not even told how many she actually reached out to. But we do get to see something, and it's something that we cannot miss. The size of her provision, the size of her answer, the size of her blessing hinged directly on how many people she involved. Had she gone to one, only one jar would have been full. Had she gone to 20, 20 would have been full. She chose and she put the limitation in her life. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 and 10, under incredible wisdom, God-given wisdom, Solomon writes, 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Do you reach out to people in the midst of your difficulties? And who do you reach out to in the midst of your difficulties? That's why we press life groups on you so much here. In fact, if you're new, the way in, the first step is through life groups. People say, I want to get involved. Join a life group. People call the church and say, hey, can I get counseling? We're going to say, okay, first join a life group. That is the doorway into Trinity Church, because we're confident that you will find good, godly people that God can use to be a blessing in the biggest times in your life, the most difficult times in your life, the hardest times in your life. We need to involve others. And this mom was instructed to use the help of others. She got to decide how many people she involved. The more she involved, the bigger the blessing would be upon her life, her children's lives, and their future. She did what she was told. And that's what a lot of us run into. That we want to pray, we go to the pastor, we seek counsel, but then we can't do what we're asked to do. Because we can't connect the dots, or because it simply seems impossible, seems insignificant. Choose to obey God. Choose to obey God. You cannot go wrong in the midst of your difficulties. Do what he says. Another thing that we can learn from this mom when she faced a difficulty and when we face our difficulties is that she was willing to put in the work. Now, for those of us that have made it this far in our difficulties, this is where some of us struggle. When faced with a difficulty, we have to be ready to do our part. See, her friends provided the jars. God multiplied the oil, but she did the pouring. She had to pour. And there will be times in your life where you have to pour. In fact, she was told, you got to pour like you've never poured before. He said, Elijah, go into your house after you've gotten as many as you can. Take your boys in there with you. Lock the door because it's time to roll up your sleeves and get to work. You got to pour, and pour some more. There will be times where you have to pour. You see, the thing that throws us off sometimes is there will be times in your life as a follower of Jesus where you don't have to do anything at all except be in awe of God's work in your life. You pray and you didn't do anything. God told you to stay put because you were probably going to ruin it. So just don't do anything and just be in awe of what he can do. I remember there was a time many years ago I was going through a financial hardship. I didn't tell anyone about it, right? I broke number 2. I didn't tell anyone about it, but I was praying with God. It was a financial situation, and we were here in the service ended. I was asked to stay and lock up everything, clean up after all y'all, man. And so I'm grumbling in the parking lot, just asking God, hey, it's been a little while, and you still haven't answered my situation. What's going on, God? And I remember I'm locking the gate. There's no one around anymore. And I'm about to cross the street, and this big gust of wind comes my way, starts blowing all of these leaves, gets dirt in my eye, just feel the rustling. And then right in front of me in the middle of the street are dollar bills, y'all. Right in front of me. And so I do what anyone else in my situation would do. I look up, down, left, right. Nobody around. There I am. You have turned my morning into dance. I just stood in awe. I had to do nothing. Nothing. And there are times where God will provide the miracle, and it just requires you to be in awe of his goodness. But watch this. Sometimes God's provision requires your participation. And that's why a lot of us feel like God's not doing anything, and he's saying, you got to pour. I'll multiply it, but you got to pour. You got to pour. You got to have your hand in this too. And we see a clear picture of this. In verse 5, it says that her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled them one after another. They weren't filled by themselves. Another time, I was sitting right there where Pastor David's sitting, right in that corner. I stopped sitting there for a particular reason, because every time someone would approach me and just give me something, right? Can you give this note to so-and-so? Can you announce this? Hey, there's an illegally parked car, and so can you spot the difference between these two pictures? And I'm trying to worship, right? But I'm standing there and it's worship time, and this sister comes and she says, Pastor, this is for you. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to announce something else. I'll get to it later. Worship finishes, and we're about to collect offering. Now, in those days, now it wasn't that long ago, pre-COVID, right? We would have ushers come down and collect the offering. And so I said, okay, let me see what this note is about. And it turns out It's money. And I was going through another financial situation. And I had already prayed, and this time I had known better. This was after the miraculous rain of money that God shined on me that day. But I was believing during worship, you're so good, I'm just going to wait on your goodness. And then I look, and I'm thinking, oh, the Lord has supplied my need. This is amazing. And then as the ushers are coming forward, the Lord says, put it in. And I thought, oh, wait, God, no need for that. You already did it. Good, we're good. This is good. And the Lord said, I need you to sow that. God, can Control Alt Delete. I think I might have pressed my knee too many times. We're good. And the Lord said, sow it. So I said, okay, and I obeyed. I said, here you go, God. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. I said, the Lord will supply. Right as I was leaving the service that day, some family catches me by the door and they said, Pastor, can we talk to you? I said, sure. And they said, during the service, in fact, during worship, God pressed so heavily on our hearts to bless you with this. And they gave me something and I took it home, and it was a lot more than what I had poured in to that offering plate. See, sometimes God's provision requires your participation. She had to pour. And during some of your difficulties, you may have to pour. But pour and pour and pour some more. Because God is the one that multiplies it. All you have to do is let it flow through your hands. But I also don't want you to miss another thing here. For all you moms and all you parents, grandparents, those of you that are over someone else young in your life, she also put her boys to work as well. And there are times as parents, as moms, as dads, where we want to do things for our kids, but we don't want them to suffer. So we do it for them. We fix it for them. We help them. We pay it off for them. But we need to put them to work too. We need to make them poor too. We need to make them pray too. We need to make them fast too. We need to make them roll up their sleeves and be a part of that too. We need to bring them to church too. You want God to work in their lives, but you don't even want to bring them here. Oh, it's because they say it's boring, that they don't learn anything. You fall for that? I say this in love. Who's the parent? Who calls the shots? I thank the Lord. My mom never took no for an answer. Even after I would hide her keys minutes before it was time to leave. Even before my sister and I would conspire and we would hide her shoes, her good shoes, the church shoes, the night before, we would hide them good. Even before I would pretend to be asleep or sick, I can't go and make myself throw up. Right before coming, she never took no for an answer. She made us poor too. She made us pray too. She made us come too. Because what my mom was praying for was for the entire family. That God would do a work in all of us. So I had to be a part of it too. My wife and I, we will share certain things with our children according to what they can understand, so that they can also see how God sustains our family. I don't want to just tell them about how good God is to our family. I want them to be a part of everything God is doing in our family. Make them pour too. Make them bring you jars. Make them be a part of the situation. Listen, this mom, 7 short verses, did something that if we follow, I'm telling you, brother, sister, there's just no way of losing. Involve God in your situation. And the faster you can do it, the faster you can be on your way, not to victory. And maybe the situation won't be resolved right away, but you will have this peace that will allow you to be cool, calm, and collective throughout it all. And you will have a certainty. That peace brings a certainty that comes, whatever comes your way, you will be okay. Involve God. But don't just involve God. Choose to obey whatever he's telling you to do. No matter how ridiculous, insignificant, or weird it may be, do it. You will not go wrong obeying God. But don't miss the getting others involved too. You cannot be a lone ranger in this. In fact, for all of you here that just refuse to involve other people in your situation because you just feel it's none of their business, or maybe you're embarrassed that you're even going through that type of situation, all you're doing is limiting the work God wants to do in your life. Because the size of her provision was based on how many people she actually reached out to. You got to get others involved, and you got to be ready to do your part. Now, before I pray, there is somebody here. You've been dealing with something the entire time that I've been talking. In fact, there's someone watching online also. And you love this. You agree with everything, and it sparks some joy in your heart. But there is a divide because another part of you feels like God would just never be able to do something like that in your situation. The type of difficulty that you have going on, the type of things that are connected in your situation, you just feel like you and God don't have that type of closeness or connection for him to really do those kinds of things in your life. But I want to tell you, just go to him. Just go to Jesus. Just try Jesus. And you will discover that he is far closer to you than you can imagine. And he is ready and willing to work in your life and work in your situation. But you need to go to him. Tell him what you need and watch how it all unfolds. Because there's one thing that I've learned in all of this, and I can confidently say. There's a verse in Isaiah 49:23, and the Lord speaks and he says this: those who hope in me, those who come to me and make me their solution, make me their answer, those who put their trust in me, those who hope in me will not be disappointed.